Hey everyone, thank you for joining. If you're joining live, it is Wednesday at noon on the East Coast and 9 a.m. out in California. And if you're catching us on the replay or at a better time for you, thank you for joining. Just a reminder, at any point in time, please feel free to ask any questions. And if you do ask questions in here, I will make sure that they get over to Grayson so that you can get his expertise at whatever point that you're asking. Also, make sure to check out the information in the link, the post, because I shared with you just a really easy way to connect with him and get even more of these tips, and also to kind of understand how people are using them is in his Facebook group. So we've got that, and he's got a ton of stuff on his website. So it's very effective marketing, which is why we are here today. I was actually just sharing with Grayson that despite starting out with a career, I wanted to be Angela Bauer actually when I was growing up. So I actually totally wanted to do advertising. I wanted to sell things. And I went in and worked for a global ad agency, both in the account side and strategic planner. But nowadays, for the last 25 years, what I've been selling is me, like my ability to help someone get healthy, powered by Better Nutrition. And now with the Better Nutrition program, telling people that there are these assessment tools that they need to use. And it's really hard. So I was just saying, I wish that you would have existed when I was there. But when I was starting out, I imagine I can still learn a lot from you. So I'm thrilled to have you here today. And I thought, Grayson, that we would start off, you were just sharing with me offline a little bit about how you got into this. And I think people just kind of always want to know. So take everybody here just through how you sort of found your way to helping dietitians and nutritionists advertise their services.
Yeah, so I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to be here today. So I guess my career started in 2008 when I graduated from college, and I had no idea that I was going to go into marketing. I graduated when the economy was crashing, and all my job opportunities that I thought I was going into were vanished pretty much overnight. So I ended up going in and actually working for our family business. It was a street sweeping business, has nothing to do with marketing. But essentially I showed up, and my dad was, kind enough to give me a job. And he basically said, all right, well, we got to figure out something for you to do here. And I remember he handed me it was either like a book or a guide or something about Google AdWords, how to run ads. And he's kind of like, hey, I've heard this is an interesting thing. Like, check this out. And that's really the first time that I ever got into, all right, how do I actually market a business? So I started, I didn't have a background in it. I just started like from having to figure it out. And so worked at that business for a number of years. Ended up going out on my own and doing the marketing I was doing for the family biz for, anytime you go into freelancing, it's basically like your client is anybody who will pay you.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think a lot of people start that way. And
Right.
so you get to get your feet wet in a lot of different industries. Fast forward to about 3 years ago now, ended up bringing on a dietitian client. And the results we got for her were not only much more impressive than what we were getting for these other industries, but it was also a lot more rewarding. If I was working with let's say an HVAC, a heating and air conditioning company, if I helped them grow their business by 10%, they were happy, but I don't really feel like I was changing anybody's life by doing that. But by working with like a dietitian, when she was able to grow her business and she was able to help more people, I felt like I kind of got like a small piece of that, that I felt like I had a small piece in being able to help facilitate that and help her clients get better results. So that's really kind of what brought me to where we are today.
That's awesome. Yeah, it does feel good to help people get better. I think that, it's obviously why so many of us are in it. So you skipped a little bit there when you said you ended up bringing on a dietitian. I'd love for you to share your personal experience because I think that's relevant. I think a lot of times dietitians will go and I've had this conversation with dietitians and nutritionists who will go and either download a course or try to learn from somebody from a marketing standpoint, but they don't necessarily understand our businesses or what we do. So I loved how you shared a little bit about sort of your personal pathway to this.
Yeah. So really, I guess what had happened is, like I said, I was doing this marketing work for a lot of different companies, and a lady that I'd gone to high school with saw some of the stuff I was putting out, and she basically just reached out and said, "Hey, do you think this will work for me?" And so you're right. I had no idea. I had no idea what the difference between a dietitian and nutritionist was. I had no idea what the business model was. But what we did is we looked at what she was doing to advertise and how she was selling her services, and essentially just took what was working in other industries. And when we saw that there really wasn't anybody doing this in the dietetic space, it was like, okay, well, we know this is working over here. Let's install it into your business and see how it goes. And it worked really, really well. It wasn't that we weren't inventing anything new. I like to pretend that or I like to think that I got smarter overnight, but it really wasn't anything groundbreaking. It was just taking something that's kind of best practice in one industry and applying it somewhere else. And so that's really what kind of started the whole ball rolling. And once she started getting great results, once her business started blowing up, really kind of the next logical thing is like, well, who else can we do this for?
That's right.
So started reaching out to more dietitians saying, hey, this is what we did for this lady. Would you like to do the same thing? And that's really what started the whole process. One thing I try to harp on my clients to do is, a lot of times growing your business isn't necessarily about doing something different. It's about doing it for somebody, changing who you're doing it for, not what you're doing. So like I was doing the same marketing work for HVAC companies, and really struggling to make a little improvement, but then you apply it to a different industry doing the exact same work and you see big results. So sometimes it's not changing what you're doing, it's who you're changing it or who you're doing it for.
Yeah. I love that. And you said something, I think it's something we've heard before, but I think it's worth starting at that point of just really, you identified that there was a problem. There are a lot of us, a lot of dietitians and nutritionists who want help. I think we feel like, especially today in this environment of infobesity, where there's so much information. And, it used to be for me, I would go on to a TV show and talk and share nutrition. Now I go on to that show, if I'm able to get on that show, even after 20 years, as an expert. And the host has a book on nutrition, and the person who's booking the host has a book on nutrition, like there's, or then a chef's coming in, and everybody has a total right to be sharing and, talking about this part. It's a very saturated space. So I think you were saying something about sort of identifying your problem.
Absolutely. And finding, and that's another thing, is like, you don't have to go out and be good at everything. Finding that one little niche, finding that one problem that you can get really good at solving, that's really all you need. There's no amount of like brainstorming or like mind mapping that I could have done that would have led me to working with dietitians, like from an intellectual standpoint. It was just by getting out into the marketplace, trying to find a problem, and then being open to the opportunity when it was like, okay, well, you're not doing this. Let's try this. This is working for other industries and see how it plays out. And so I think being open to, allowing that to come to you and just, you're like, if you can solve a problem, offer to solve it and ask to be paid to do it. And that's kind of that's kind of a great way to get in and try a number of things, especially for people that are just getting started.
So I'm going to break an interviewer rule, and I'm going to ask you 2 questions at once, but I want to ask them so that you know that they're coming tag team together, right? So I'm going to lead you along and lead the audience along. So is there anything, you talked about you're able to sort of replicate what better marketing is across industries and into this marketplace. So is there anything that is unique to the dietitian nutritionist marketing space that we should really be alert to on that part? And then said differently, what would you say is one of the greatest challenges for dietitians, nutritionists in doing the marketing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a number of things that kind of come up when we start doing the marketing is there are some unique challenges. And that's, we do have to, the certain platforms that we're advertising on, whether it be Facebook or Google, any of the ad networks, we do have to play by their rules. And so they are really, and I think it's a good thing, they're really trying to crack down on people that are selling the dream, but don't necessarily have, the substance to back it up. So we do have to be delicate in how we approach when we're talking about health conditions. We're talking about, potentially protected information about people. So there are some challenges there. I think one of the benefits is that there's almost like, take anybody walking down the street. They all have a challenge with their health in some way. Like, ask anybody, do you want to be, do you want to lose some weight? Do you want to put on more muscle? Do you want to get rid of, one of the things, like I had to work with a dietitian because I had developed eczema on my knees and elbows. People have migraines, people have infertility. Like there's so many issues out there that I think one of the benefits of the industry is that there are just so many problems that exist that all you need to do is find one that you're really, really good at solving. And chances are there's probably not a lot of people that are talking to just that specific problem. And so when you go from being a generalist to trying to help a lot of different people to just focusing on one thing, it becomes very targeted. And you'll find if you go into there's so many different like Facebook groups, for example. If you go into one of those groups, sometimes those groups will be 50,000 people large, and they're dying for somebody to come along and help them. Like the reason those groups exist is that they haven't found the solution to their problem yet. If they had found the solution, they probably wouldn't be hanging out there. So they're craving help for somebody to come along and to help them solve a problem. So I think that is one of the there's the challenge there of having to play by these platforms' rules, but also there's so much opportunity that no one person could help everybody in the world. So we're never going to run out of people to help and to be able to work with.
Yeah. So here's one of the challenges, and someone actually wrote in this question in advance and said, like, it's the question of like time and ability to do it all. And so as dietitians, nutritionists, we're trying to stay up to date on all the latest information. So in any given day, I'm trying to figure out, okay, I really want to do that nutrigenomics webinar, but Ashley's got Grayson on, and I really want to be able to catch them live from a marketing standpoint. And it's like we feel like we're CEO of two businesses, right? Of the nutrition side and of the marketing side. And that's for a lot of people, and especially people who are younger in their practice, not age younger, but younger, newer in their practice, are really finding challenges with how do I apply the right amount of time and effort to marketing while I know I need to do this other work to continue to become the practitioner that I want to be, or to be able to be as current, or just learn about, as you said, something that may become my area of specialty to really dive into that part. So do you have any sort of structure that you recommend for how you allocate how much time you put to marketing, or how much marketing, how would I make that choice? Do I watch, of course we watch Grayson and Ashley, but how do I find time for that and for my nutrition education, as well as obviously my clients, et cetera, from a business standpoint?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the exercises that I encourage people to do, and there's not a hard science behind this, is really, let me start here. I think one of the ways that they get into business and they're like, I want to make however much money. I want to make six figures. I want to make 100 grand a year. And they kind of work backwards and they're like, all right, I'm going to work 40 hours a week. And that means I have to charge this amount. And they kind of back themselves into a corner because they have to be working 40 hours a week. They have to have clients, back to back to back to make that work. And so kind of just the model to start with has kind of trapped them. And so there isn't hardly any time to go out and market and do the things that you need to do. I think a better process is to kind of take a step back and say, okay, I want to make this amount. How many hours do I want to be working? How much time, like how many clients do I want to see? And so when we work backwards like that, a lot of times charging $100 an hour for a consult just doesn't work. Like you can't have that business model. So really the only way to be able to satisfy that is to have fewer clients at a higher price point. So let's just say, again, if you want to make 100 grand a year, to me, it's a whole lot easier to make that serving 50 clients at $2,000 a piece than it would to be, what is that? Like 1,000 clients at $100 a piece. So, it's going to be easier to deliver. Your clients are going to get better results because they get more hands-on attention. And then the time commitment for you gives you plenty of space to do that continuing education, to get better at your craft, to learn, more of the marketing to bring those clients on. One client we had looked at, she was a new mom. And so her time had gone from kind of having a lot of time to very limited. And essentially she had to triple her prices. She was charging, I think, around $2,000, and she ended up going, she's like, I can only work with a client if they'll pay me $6 grand. And that's the only way that it could work out, that she could make the money that she wanted, live the lifestyle she wanted, and have the time and freedom to spend it with her family and her new baby. So, and those clients are out there. That's like, there's so many problems that exist that people are willing to pay a premium price to finally have resolved once and for all. So I think to find that balance, it's really about figuring out what do you truly want, and then working backwards to say, this is the model that I need to operate in order to make that happen.
It's the business part. You got a couple of thumbs up on that one. So I think people are very much resonating with that. We're notorious. I think it's changing. I observe that it's changing with people getting help from folks like yourself and kind of moving in that direction. But notorious for not charging or not being comfortable with higher price points from a financial standpoint and the charging. And, maybe part of that is associated with, as a profession, we've often been in the insurance model. So somebody was billing and then you've got the insurance, and there's a part of us that probably wishes, as you said, it feels really good to help people. There's a part, for many of us, I remember somebody once saying to me, you're more like an artist than an entrepreneur, because you would do what you were doing if you weren't paid for it, right? And I'm like, that's right. And they're like, that ain't going to get you where you want to go, Ashley, that kind of a thing. So how do you help people find, so you just talked about very clearly, how do you set what your pricing needs to be. But let's talk about a little bit more about the internal comfort, the drive to charge what your real value is.
Yep. So, and maybe this is just a personal philosophy, but this is how I operate. Mm-hmm. I would rather have a huge transformation for a small amount of people than a little transformation for a lot of people. So really fixing a major problem for somebody rather than just coming along and putting on Band-Aids for, as many people as I can. I guess another analogy that is good to kind of keep in mind is like, anytime you get on a flight, the flight attendant always comes on and says, if the oxygen masks drop from the ceiling, make sure to put yours on first. And they say that because if you pass out, you are no good to help anybody else. Mm-hmm. So when you're in private practice, your first responsibility is to take care of the private practice and to take care of you so that you can continue to operate without having to go back and get a day job. There's so many people that come out and they have great hearts. They want to help so many people, and I commend them for that. But if they aren't making enough profit to be able to stay in business and they have to go get a day job or they have to supplement their income some other way, and they aren't able to fully focus on their craft, I don't think that's serving their clients. Mm-hmm. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that the business is operating profitably so that they have all the resources available to them to now go out and help those people. So put their own oxygen and mask on first, and that's going to allow them to help more people.
I love that part of your first priority is actually, I was thinking, yeah, we got to take care of ourselves, but I love that you said to the business. That's awesome. That's such a great way to think about it. And so let's shift over to this notion of courses and programs and offerings. And, do you have, what's your funnel? And I mean, oh my gosh, it's like a whole new language after we just already learned a whole new medical language. It's like, it just feels like there's so much stuff today. So do you feel that it's possible to financially reach your goals as a private practitioner without selling a program or a course or having a free offering? Or do we feel like we're just at the era where we need that to attract clients?
Sorry, was the question, do we need a program to make? I certainly think it's easier. And really, I guess I don't like to have a ton of, I don't know. I don't like to be hard fast in like saying like this is a program and this is a course. But I think what's important is getting good at solving one problem and having a consistent way to do that. If you're working with lots of different clients, and I like, ask me how I know, when I was working as a freelancer, every new business that we went into, it was like starting from ground zero. You had to learn the terminology. You had to learn like what's normal pricing, like how do other people do it, what's expected in the industry. And so it's the same thing if you're working with weight loss and IBS and migraines. Like every new issue you work with, it's like starting from scratch. And so it makes it really hard to scale because you're doing all this detective work every single time. So a program, really forces you to get consistent on how you solve a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And the nice thing is that you get better over time. You start plugging holes as you go. If you take one person through it, it's going to be a lot of work that first couple times, because you gotta do the work, you gotta create everything from scratch. But now once you get a process going, now you can keep moving people through it, and you're like, oh, I've already created that. Oh, I can anticipate these problems that are coming and address them before they become a problem. Mm-hmm. So having a program is more about having a consistent way to do something, and know that, hey, I'm able to get a consistent result. If I take the right person with this problem and apply my process, I'm going to get a consistent result, a large majority of the time. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's always going to be anomalies, but we really want to base our program and our effort on what's the overwhelming majority. Let's not worry about the outliers. We can address those when they come up, but let's get some consistency into the business.
I love that. So Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook and Instagram are now, together. So we've got all the ads, we've got YouTube, we've got Twitter. I don't even know if anyone tweets anymore. We've got so many. Then we still have direct mail, and we definitely have, we have all these different forms of things that we can do in terms of marketing. And putting together a marketing plan, again, feels like we need to have another day job. So again, 2 questions asked at once is it better, or when do you know that you should invite someone else to help you do it as opposed to doing it yourself? And then the second part to that is I read that you wrote, and I totally agree, is like you don't have to be everywhere, you have to hone in, but it's really hard to have like JOMO versus FOMO, right? Like mm-hmm. I think that there's a lot of times where you feel like I'm missing out. So let's start with like, when is it a good idea to bring in somebody to do your marketing for you versus when, how do I figure out if I should just learn it and do it myself? And then the second part, and that includes everything from like doing the Google ads and, all this other stuff. And then the second part of that question, I'll come back to for you.
Yep. So great question. And it was funny. I was actually just talking to somebody about this yesterday, because she was asking like, hey, somebody reached out and offered to do I think it was Facebook ads for her. And she was kind of curious, my thoughts on that. I'm probably not a good person to ask, because I do all that stuff myself. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason for that is because it's what I teach. I want to have my hands on it every single day so that I am familiar with it and getting good at it. One of the pieces of advice I gave her was learning how to click the buttons. Okay, here's how I upload my ad. Here's how to put this button here. Here's the colors to use, that sort of thing. To me, that's the easy part. The tougher part that's really hard to hire somebody to do, especially when you're starting, is knowing your market. What do your people respond to? If you're putting out the same generic message that everybody else in the marketplace is putting out, it doesn't matter how good your ads are set up, how sophisticated your campaigns are. Nobody's going to respond to it. It's just going to be, it's very vanilla. But once you really understand what are the hot buttons of that market, what do they respond to, what are the pain points that really nobody's talking about, but when they hear it, they're just like, oh my gosh, this person gets me. Mm-hmm. Once you have that, then you don't even have to really be that great at clicking the buttons and setting up the campaigns, mm-hmm. because if you're talking to the right pain points, people are gonna hear about it. Mm-hmm. So I guess my piece of advice would be, if you're going to start running ads, I would either take a course, hire a mentor, work with somebody that's doing it, and get good at that one thing. Like you mentioned, you don't have to do everything. Mm-hmm. Every channel works. People get clients from Facebook, people get clients from Instagram, people get clients blogging, from podcasts. All those channels work. Where most people kind of, I think, get lost is that they're trying to do too many things, and that they don't get good at understanding the nuances of any one platform. Mm-hmm. So stick with one. There's 1 billion people on Facebook. There's 500 million or 1 billion people on Instagram. There's plenty of people out there. We're only looking to help, a couple hundred people a year, mm-hmm. most. So any one platform is going to be enough, but stick with it long enough to get good at learning learning the nuances there. And that's going to serve you much more effectively than trying to do tons of different things.
Yeah, it's so important. I feel like we somehow got conditioned. Everybody needs a website. Everybody needs, here's your Facebook page. And then it's like, you have to have all these icons on your business card. I'm everywhere, as opposed to I'm just right here. Come meet me. I think that that's a really smart piece on that part. Okay, so I had another dietitian who reached out. I'm sorry, not a dietitian, another nutritionist who reached out to me who's not a dietitian. And she's struggling because the community that she's in is there are some dietitians who are critical of her work as a nutritionist. So what she's trying to figure out from a marketing standpoint is, and it's not for me to judge, seems like she knows her stuff and all that good stuff. But I think it's the competitive component. So how do you work on breakthrough when there are people who are doing the same thing in your space, maybe in your exact same? So let's take thyroid for a second, right? Okay, so you're a thyroid nutritionist, but there are thyroid dietitians, and you want to make sure that somebody can come to you. What are some of the marketing tips for differentiating yourself? Or you could be the dietitian who wants to differentiate from the nutritionist. Yep.
So that's a great question. So, and it probably helps me because I wasn't I'm still not. I'm not a dietitian. I'm not a nutritionist. Mm-hmm. So when people start throwing around kind of the industry jargon, most of the clients that you're going to work with have no idea what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So if you're coming in saying I have this XYZ certification and I trained under this person, it's just going to go over their head because they don't that doesn't mean anything to them. But what everybody understands is their problem. What's happening because of that thyroid issue? And again, because I'm just going to I'm just going to make something up on the spot.
Totally.
But okay, is their energy low? Is it affecting are they having really bad constipation? Are they cold all the time? What are those things that the thyroid is affecting? That's what people understand. And so if we start talking to those problems, hey, are you feeling cold all the time because your thyroid's slowing down? Or maybe they're having side effects because of some medication. If somebody says, hey, that's totally normal, we can help you fix that. That's what they're gonna key onto. Mm-hmm. They understand what their problem is. And when somebody's coming to them with a reasonable way to solve that, that's what they're gonna key into. So I think people are, I don't want to say getting sick of the credential marketing, but if we look at kind of what's in the news these days, people are very skeptical of even the top authority figures. Mm-hmm. Okay, the Surgeon General comes out and says that eggs are bad for you. Right. Well, actually no, the eggs are actually good for you. Oh, fats are bad. Fats are going to make you fat. Oh, actually no, fats aren't going to make. So there's even the top people, the best doctors in the world are kind of losing credibility because there's all these issues mm-hmm. flown around. So I think really it comes down to don't worry as much about the credential. Don't try to be marketing that as much as what problem are you really good solving, because that's what people are going to pay attention to, and that's what's going to set you apart. Mm-hmm. I would rather go work with somebody that is super good at solving the one thing that I need, and if they have some specific credential behind it, fantastic. But if not, all I really care about is getting my problem solved. Mm-hmm. So I should have a caveat, because I work with so many dietitians. I don't mean to downplay anybody's credential. No. I think education is incredibly important, but don't hold that up as I got this, so now I deserve to get clients and not do anything else. Mm-hmm. So don't hide behind the credential as the marketing piece. You still have to be really, really good at solving a problem. And if you lead with that, I think you're going to be much more effective.
Yeah, and I did not take it at all that way. If anyone was taking it, I'm glad that you clarified. I think what you started off with too was just so impactful, where it's the average person doesn't know the difference between a dietitian and nutritionist. I can tell you that because there are so many articles that are now written, what's the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist, where to your point, it's what people really care about is, I have this problem, can you help me solve it? I think, which is just a totally different space. So I think that's super, super smart advice on that part. Okay. So when we're talking about creating a program, or we're talking about charging, I think yours is the $2,000 and above, which can feel very scary but exciting for a lot of people. What do you look at as the resources, the financial resources that you need to have in order to successfully actually not just create something like that, but launch it? So I think the question is, what are the finances that you would want to be able to put behind something like that to know if you're like, if the time is right for you? Obviously, as you start making money at a higher level, you're going to be able to invest it back in, but just out the door. And do you need to have any clients ever or you need to have hit 100 or, whatever to be at that entry point for doing a 2,000 plus program?
Yeah. So I'll answer your latter question first.
Okay. I keep doing that to you. I keep doing the 2-in-1. Sorry.
We're good. I think if you can solve a major problem, there's really no reason why you have to wait to start offering a high-end program. We have lots of people that come in and they're like, they see how other dietitians have operated, and they can see that this hourly model just isn't all that effective. And so they a lot of times I'll have people reaching out to me that are brand new to private practice, and they're like, look, I just want to start with the best business model possible. So how are we going to do that? And so that's where we start offering programs right from the get-go. They can solve a great problem. Maybe they've worked in some sort of other like clinical capacity or work for another dietitian, and so they're good at what they do. So, and they just want to start from day one offering a program that is getting them paid what they're worth. Mm-hmm. As for financial resources to get started, the great thing now is that there's so many free resources out there that to get started, there's really not much that you need. I think there's certain having some sort of like CRM can make things easier. Like there's lots of good ones out there. Any of the major ones are going to be effective just to help you manage that. Maybe like an email marketing sort of service would be helpful so that you can communicate with the leads that are coming in. But really, other than that, the main thing is if I sat somebody down in front of you, like, could you work with them and get them a result? Building out all the like content portal and having like fancy handouts and hiring a designer, all that stuff can come later. The main thing is, can you help somebody, make an offer to help them? Certainly there's ways that we can structure that to make it as profitable as possible and then still also get the client a great result. But beyond that, there's not a whole lot that you have to do. Really, like you were saying earlier, you don't have to have a website to get started. Mm-hmm. Like you could go just create a Facebook page and start inviting people to that, communicating with them there, send Facebook messages to communicate to people that have reached out. And once somebody reaches out, wants to get signed up, use a program like PayPal or something to have them pay you to get started. So really, there's almost nothing that you need to get started. We can always build out the infrastructure as you start to grow and want to automate more of those things.
Good. You did it for me because I wanted to bust a lot of insecurities or excuses, totally appropriate excuses that I hear from people, in terms of why I'm not ready to move. The time isn't right now. It's kind of, I always joke when somebody says like, when's the right time to have a kid or get a dog? And it's like, if you keep waiting for that time, it's not on that part, right? So I think in that way, it's just, as you said, there's so many tools today. As much as there's so much information and that can feel overwhelming or like too much, there are actually so many tools. And I think that part is, that's awesome. Really helpful on that part.
So I think a good, maybe a question, when you're like, when's the right time? It's like, okay, well, when would you like to start getting paid what you're worth? If a year from now is good, like absolutely wait. But if you'd like to start getting paid what you're worth today, well, then today sounds like a pretty good time to get started. Mm-hmm.
That one hits particularly home, at 45, I'm about 2 years into a startup. So a little bit different on that part, but, you do sit there and say like, there are those moments, but I do think it's really important. There's being paid what you're worth. And there's also, just being aware of the successes that you're seeing, getting the feedback. So I had somebody message me just saying, so they're wondering about for you, do you take on clients or do you have a program? So why don't you tell us about your side of how you can work with someone?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do take on clients. And essentially what we're working on together is, first of all, putting that program together, what it should include, what it shouldn't include. And it's very flexible. one thing that I'm helping people see is we don't have to have this super rigid thing where we create 8 weeks of videos and then, kind of force it on somebody and say, hey, follow this. Mm-hmm. We can be much more fluid with it, where we can bring on somebody for a certain amount of time, let's say 3 months. That's kind of like a good kind of ballpark for people. Mm-hmm. And we're going to work with them over a series of sessions to get them a certain result. And now we can, once we have that person, we can start building in certain things like, okay, what sort of resources do they need? Are there certain trainings that they have questions that come up over and over again that maybe to save us time, we want to create like a video that explains something? Mm. I remember somebody coming out and saying, if I have to explain the difference between a fat and a carb and a protein ever again, like I'm going to pull my hair out. So, all right, well, great. Make a training, fire it up, record like a little webinar, and now give that to your clients as soon as they come on. So you only have to do the work once and they can use it over and over again. So once we have that program figured out, then really the next thing is, okay, now we need a way to sell it. And how do we have a conversation with somebody that leads to the point where it makes sense for them to invest thousands of dollars to work with you? One of the things that I think I help people do when they come into the program is we need to get out of our own way. Mm. It's not about us anymore. It's about how can I help this person, and is their problem worthy of a sizable investment? If the problem's not worth the investment, all the bells and whistles that we're going to throw at them just aren't going to matter. Mm. But if they say, yeah, you know what, losing this 30 pounds, yeah, that's absolutely worth $3,000. Okay, well, now we can talk about how we would administer that program with them. So it's really about tying the investment to the problem that they have. Mm. And then having a way to lead people through that to find if we can help them, if they have that problem. And then also, essentially asking them, would you like to come on board? And then the last piece is the marketing piece. So once we have the program figured out, once we have the sales process figured out, really then, okay, now we need some people coming in. And so, we work on a handful of organic strategies to be able to start communicating with the market, but then also paid advertising. Really, the kind of the two things we focus on are Facebook ads and Google AdWords. Mm. Actually, now they're called Google Ads, and simple ways that we can spend money in order to increase our exposure more than we can organically. Yeah. So that's kind of the gist of how I work with people and what my area of expertise is. I guess a piece also is there's a lot of concern of like, I don't know what my niche is. Like I need to go figure out, I need to figure out my niche first. So we spend a lot of time at the beginning for people that don't have a niche figured out is, mm-hmm. Okay, how do we go out and find like somebody that has a problem that's gonna warrant an investment of several $1,000s. Mm-hmm. And kind of like I mentioned earlier, like one of those tactics is if you're ever thinking like, oh, all the good niches are taken, just go start scrolling through all the Facebook groups that exist. Right. Like literally there's thousands. Or
Reddit. Reddit's another one that like is amazing. Yeah. Like, I go deep into Reddit and it's like, wow, I never realized and people delineating for you between the problems, right? Like, yeah. So yeah, are all niches.
There's literally thousands of groups, and like any one of those, like all you have to do is help one of those groups. Take any sort of syndrome, condition, like start typing that into Facebook, and there's going to be all these things. And again, what it goes back to is we're not looking to help, not that we don't want to help thousands of people, but we can have a nice little successful business by working with 100 people a year. Yeah. And that's really what we're looking to start. If we want to make six figures, help 100 people at either 1,000 a piece or help 50 people at 2,000 a piece. That's going to be, that's what we're looking to do to start. And then we can always scale up from there.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Grayson, this has been, I hope for so many, and I actually know it will be the kick in the butt, but also just really love how, and it's kudos to you in terms of your marketing, but how clear you are on how this moves from problem to solution. And I really love that part of it's understanding who someone is, not so much about what you have to offer, but really who someone is and what problem can you solve. So Thank you so much. This was awesome. I hope you guys will definitely head over to GraysonCarter.com, one of the easiest websites I've ever navigated. Made me think I need to go back to mine and figure out some more stuff, but so appreciate it. And if you want to reach out to him, as I mentioned, he's got a private Facebook group, which is a great way to connect, to learn a little bit more about how people are working and just how you can hone in on some of this stuff. Obviously, you can also connect with him if you're interested in working with him directly. So thank you.
Absolutely. You're very welcome. I had a good time.
Great. All right. And thank you, Reed and Heather and Stacy. It was a pleasure to have you join us today. Okay. Take care, everyone. Bye.
See ya.